This episode of The Clear Out was recorded on the 4th of January 2023 at home in Wicklow. And it is the very generic New Year's episode. I say that joking somewhat, but certainly part of the episode is dedicated to how we feel at this time of year. We've put 1 year to bed and we're looking at a year to come, and for many people it's a sort of a time to set out one's store, or set out one's stall. What's the expression? Anyway, it's a time to get ready, make plans, set objectives, targets, for some people to make resolutions. So I just try to speak a little bit about that, my own relationship to that, how I feel at this time of year. I also, at the start of the episode, I spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes maybe, talking about movies. Just ones that I omitted in my wrap-up last year. There were some notable omissions that I felt I wanted to include. So that's a bit of a follow-on from last week's review of the year. And I also spent some time, I hadn't particularly planned on spending time, but I ended up spending a bit of time talking about an uncle of mine who just passed away on New Year's Eve, and I just sort of indulged the first quiet moment I've had really since his passing to share publicly my thoughts and feelings. So there's that as well, and I think I managed to somehow draw a link to that, and wellness, resilience, resolutions, and getting used to things and habituating to things that are difficult, and that becomes part of my frame. So my frame for the new year, and my frame for my own kind of wellness regime in general. Okay, so I hope that makes sense, but that is what's coming up, and I will see you there around the corner. Cheers.
Not gonna change my mind, leaving the dream behind. Keep my emoji.
Hi, my name is Dara Clear, and you're listening to The Clear Out. You're very welcome, and a happy new year. Welcome to 2023. That's a very, very futuristic date if you're a child of the 70s. 2023. There you are now. We've arrived in the future, and the future is dominated by technology, but perhaps not in the way that was depicted in sci-fi movies of yore. It's not quite a futuristic techscape, nor is it a dystopian hellscape. They seem to be the preferred options, although you do often also get the utopian serenity, the multi-personage view of the future, where all creatures great and small get along, including the vets, I presume. That's a reference. That's a reference to James Herriot. Okay. Anyway, there you go. Now, funny enough, now thinking of James Herriot and those books, none of which I ever read, but then I do remember the series on British television, or from British television. And it's funny, I was having a chat the other night. My sister-in-law and her now fiance were here to visit for a few days over New Year's, and my sister-in-law's son was with them as well. And the fiance is from Yorkshire. He's a Leeds United fan, because he's fundamentally well, I don't want to say he's a Leeds man, because he's not from Leeds, but he's from North Yorkshire. Anyway, he's a good lad, and we were just recalling all these ancient TV shows and TV personalities that filled the entertainment frames of our youths. And of course, here in Ireland, we got a huge amount of English product broadcast on our screens, because we were able to get English TV stations coming across the Irish Sea. Now, in my own household, we weren't, and I felt I was missing out when I'd hear other kids talking about shows like Porridge, Allo Allo, stuff like the Russ Abbott Show, of all things. So, yeah, it's funny to think what was curated to be broadcast on the Irish stations and what was left on the English stations. But in any case, the memories were there, and there was this kind of tradition that seemed to carry on. If America had sort of vaudeville and the various entertainment circuits around the country, and was it the Chitlin circuit? Was that where black performers performed? Because they was segregated. I might have that wrong. If that was the American tradition, it seemed over here, and certainly on English television, that the tradition sort of moved from sort of working men's clubs, or from sort of the music halls, the old music halls in these old kind of Victorian theatres, to working men's clubs. And that tradition of kind of light entertainment and broad entertainment, like dancing, comedy sketches, singing, whatever. Those figures seem to still be represented in the personalities, the public personalities that peppered the screens of the 70s and 80s. Anyway, so I guess it was just a bit of a funny little nostalgia trip. Although it's a strange kind of nostalgia when you look back and kind of go, oh my goodness. I mean, I was talking... there was a show about Dick Turpin. Do you remember that? There was a show about Dick Turpin, and Dick Turpin was like the kind of highway outlaw in England in what? The 1700s? Before? Later? 1800s? And wasn't his horse called Black Bess? And there was a series. I'm sure there was a series for Dick Turpin, and the horse used to come across the cobbles through the fog under a swinging wooden sign at night, of a tavern. And Dick Turpin, he was the guy. I was like, okay, cool, this is good. I was thinking, wow, wait, that's what passed for superheroes back in the day. That was the high end. But anyway, Dick Turpin, of all people. My nephew who was with us here was referring to him as Dick Turban, which I thought was quite funny. I think he was a different outlaw, perhaps aboard a camel in a different landscape entirely. Maybe not a camel, maybe a horse as well. But come on, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so there you go. It is that time. It's so funny because like last week, I did that kind of review of my gear, but I limited it to the movies I watched. And after I finished recording, I realised there were several notable omissions, which I'm going to redress in very brief synopsis momentarily. But it's funny when you're kind of keeping an eye on podcasts and lists or listicles. Do you know what a listicle is? It's an article that's based around a list. And of course, all through the latter parts of December, across media, you get the kind of the wrap-ups of the year, the listicles, the best movies of the year, the best songs, the best novels, the big events of the year, the top sporting moments of the year, all the rest. And last week on the podcast, I did my own, I made my own attempt at that. and just reviewed my watching. What was on my viewing diet for the year last year, and you just roll over a few days, and then it's that other generic bit of output where it's okay, it's a new year. What are my resolutions? What are my plans? How do we begin the new year? Fresh start, a clean view, and how do I set out my stall for the year? And they're completely generic, aren't they? And I'm like, okay, well, I may as well throw my lot in as well. So I have some thoughts that I will get into in due course, but as I said, I just quickly want to just throw in another few movie titles and a couple of other things I watched last year, because I realised, I forgot this, I forgot that, and there were three movies that all had a sort of an impact on me for different reasons that I forgot to mention, and they were three movies by three movies by very established movie makers, screenwriters, and in the order I watched them last year, they were Ridley Scott's The Last Duel, Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, and Paul Schrader's The Card Counter. And three really, I think, really distinctive and very well made films. The Last Duel I watched at the start of the year, and it was based on a historic event, which was the last duel to the death between two men in France, and it was over a disputed rape accusation and the dishonouring of one of the combatants' wives, and it was very brilliant. I thought it was really well constructed and really well acted by the main players. And I'm going to kick myself here because the main actress, it's the actress from Killing Eve. What's her name? Is it Jodie? I want to say Jodie Whittaker, but is that correct? I don't know. I just want to double check that just to get that right. But the actors involved were Matt Damon, Adam Driver, and Ben Affleck, and they were all in their own ways really, really good. Like really, really good. Adam Driver was a terrific villain. Matt Damon was a terrific kind of not very smart but very vain and self-important man with a massive chip on his shoulder and a very unattractive character. He played him so well. Ben Affleck was hilarious as a man of status and privilege who was just interested in partying and chasing young women and just being a bit of a hedonist. Jodie Comer, sorry, not Jodie Whittaker, different actress. Jodie Comer then played the wife of Matt Damon, and probably the more difficult, more nuanced role to play. Some people objected that it was a little bit too woke, that it kind of incorporated kind of, I don't know, female empowerment ideas. I'm like, okay, well, what the hell? Is that so bad? Like, it felt very integral to the story, and I think, unless I was going to get that wrong, the female movie maker, is it Nicole, I can't pronounce her name, Holofcener, she collaborated with Damon and Affleck to write the script, and it was kind of told in a Rashomon-esque way, the retelling of the same central incident from three different perspectives, and she wrote the female perspective. I thought it was a really, really good film. I haven't come back to it, but I look forward to seeing it again. So that was The Last Duel, Ridley Scott, always a safe pair of hands. And then, yes, West Side Story by Spielberg, I just thought was brilliant. And just a great spectacle. And for me, one of the performances of the year was Ariana DeBose's Anita. She was just electric on screen, and yeah, mesmerizing. Compelling screen presence in that role, and the big set pieces were beautifully staged, and it was deeply romantic as well, which of course it should be, and deeply tragic, and very lovely to see Rita Moreno there in her 80s singing Somewhere as this older maternal figure to some of the characters in the story. But I just thought, what you look at there is someone who loves cinema, paying homage in a way only he can, as the great filmmaker that he is. Like Spielberg's, I think, terrible tendency for mawkishness and sentimentality will often undermines his movies. But of course, this wasn't his original script. Didn't he collaborate with the Angels in America? Tony Kushner, is that his name? Angels in America, playwright. I think he did the screenplay for Spielberg's version. And of course, he had all the Spanish-speaking characters speaking Spanish without subtitles. And there was something about that kind of gave an extra layer of, I don't know, something authentic, something not sanitized, something not homogenized through a white lens, and it gave things an extra layer of kind of vitality and texture, which was very welcome. And yeah, great performances all round, acting wise and singing wise too. And I really recommend it if you have any love of movie musicals and any love for the original West Side Story. It's well worth checking out. Just go with it, go on the journey. And then Paul Schrader's The Card Counter, a very grimly, uncompromisingly adult movie. And Paul Schrader, of course, he's just got this long legacy of depicting sort of tormented, lost men. Most famously, of course, he wrote the character of Travis Bickle for Taxi Driver, another movie I watched last year, which I didn't mention last week. And, of course, that was a revisiting of that movie. But Schrader, it's almost like his religion. It's almost like a compulsion. Can I, keep presenting these characters who are just wrestling with the most tormented parts of their souls and put it into a narrative that takes us through key moments of their journey to often a desperate grasp at salvation or redemption, recovery, or some sort of existential reckoning with helplessness, hopelessness, a complete distaste for life, a complete self-repulsion or self-abnegation. Fun times. Anyway, in The Card Counter, he put together a really tight little kind of drama thriller with Oscar Isaac as the central character, who we learn was a interrogator / torturer in an Abu Ghraib-like facility, and is just trying to come to terms with his demons and his guilt, and is fundamentally on a pathway to self-destruction, to kind of purge himself and scourge the guilt and the shame out of himself, sort of a self-obliteration course. So, but really good, really good, well worth looking at as well. So there were those three movies I forgot to mention last week, and I should have mentioned Taxi Driver and Sofia Coppola's Marie Antoinette and the Safdie brothers' Good Time. I dedicated a whole episode to those three movies last year, so I forgot to talk about them as well. The one other thing I would mention is I watched the entire first season of Yellowstone and I can't remember how far I got into the second season. This was I think it's on Paramount Plus, but it's sort of a Kevin Costner headed contemporary Western saga set in, what is it, Montana? But looking at these sort of modern, very powerful ranchers and what they're fighting against to hold on to their land and keep their legacy intact. I don't mind a bit of cowboy action. I don't mind a bit of ranching action on screen, and good, nice North American landscape. A lot of kind of tough men in in chaps. Some standout performances really from kind of Cole Hauser as this sort of adopted son who does the dirty work for the cynical King Lear like Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner, he's good at those kind of rugged, tough, kind of unrelenting characters. But and this has been a hugely successful show in the States. I think it's heading into season 5, maybe 4 or 5. And it's written by Taylor Sheridan, whose movies I've talked about before on this show. Wind River might be one of my favourite ones of his. Didn't he also write Sicario and Hell or High Water? So again, this is Taylor Sheridan's former actor and now a screenwriter who loves these kind of stories about sort of modern American, often men who are living tough outdoor lives on the borders of conflict, often where white America meets indigenous America, and he's got a feel for something about the rugged toughness of these flashpoints and areas of conflict, and tough men kind of knuckling down and getting on with the job that has to be done. It can get a bit much, but when he gets the balance right, it's nice. Yellowstone, ultimately, as much as I kind of just went with it, Kelly Riley also has a very good ongoing role in that show as the very smart but kind of very messy daughter of Kevin Costner. Wes Bentley of American Beauty fame as a sort of it's kind of a bit of a comeback role for him, as kind of the weakest member of the family. But ultimately, it just got really soapy very quickly, and I couldn't keep going. I had to stop watching, and that, as it happened, involved the Wes Bentley character walking out of a cafe from his ex-girlfriend, and she kind of goes, you might want to be a better man for, your unborn child. And he's like, what? You're pregnant? And I just thought, here, lads, come on. And like just every episode, it seemed, started to be stacked with that kind of nonsense. So I walked away, and I won't be returning. So that's a shame. But anyway, what can you do? I guess it's a bit more mainstream. I don't know. Anyway, whatever. Okay, so that's it. That's just the final wrap up. As I said, of my my viewing pleasures of last year, or my viewing displeasures, and yes, now on to other things. So, the new year, what does it bring? It brings a sense of, I don't know, is it a sense of relief for having survived the year that's gone? Is it a sense of dread of, oh my goodness, here's another year. We're looking down the barrel of another year of unknowns, another year of derailments. But that's obviously quite a negative or anxious viewpoint. But that's not irrelevant. I don't think that's uncommon. And of course, we get it on the back of the midwinter festival, the midwinter holidays, the midwinter celebration, the Christmas indulgence, which is quite intense. And that kind of extra leaning into more food, more drink, more sitting around, more cozying up. Kind of lovely, of course, on a lot of levels, which I've spoken about before. Now, this Christmas for me was tainted by not being well. I mean, ultimately, I was sick for a couple of weeks, and it did rob me of my normal energy levels and my normal enthusiasm for the season that was in it. I just found myself feeling knackered a lot of the time, and that seemed to be of a piece with how I finished the year, and by that I'm referring to the last 6 to 8 weeks of the year. I just felt like my head was completely fried, and I measure this a bit by the quality of the podcasts I put out in that time. I just feel like the last several episodes, I was just putting them out under enormous time pressure, enormous sort of mental pressure, and barely getting the job done, and struggling badly to be coherent and cohesive and keep my through line alive. And just finishing an episode and going, it'll have to do, and putting it out, and then reflecting on it and going, oh my goodness, that really wasn't up to snuff. And it's annoying. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I'm proud of that. I mean, and I did already sort of try to qualify those experiences last week, because I was frustrated with the aspects of the Christmas special. But again, I was really bloody sick when I recorded that. And you know, don't misunderstand me. I'm not going to be here, wallowing in this, but I'm taking the opportunity to sort of hold myself accountable and acknowledge the flawed nature and the flawed experience, the kind of dog-eared. I'm hesitating to use the word half-assed, because I think that's going to be the new quote for the show. I think those episodes were better than half-assed. To clear out, you should listen. It's better than half-assed. Yeah. So, in any case, I don't know. For me, we turn into January, and January is, as it happens, it's also my birthday month. So I'll be having a birthday in a few days' time, and so I always quite enjoy January, and I think of it as my time, indulging my own vanity. I like that very true winter month. I like often those lovely, bright, sharp, cold, fresh days. There's something about that I find very invigorating, very inspiring. I feel that there's a cleanliness to those days, and of course there are plenty of days that are not like that. Today is one of them. It's grey and kind of mucky and muddy and not that nice, although I did see a large kite circling overhead, a red kite with that impressive wingspan, and that was they are always eye-catching and slightly breathtaking. But so I have this sort of lifelong positive association with January and the start of the year, just because I get a little birthday, and I selfishly take a moment for myself to kind of go, cool. This is my season, and I've managed to not lose that over the years, even though my birthday as a kid often meant the first day back at school, and that felt less than celebratory, less than triumphant. And also, like a lot of people who have birthdays close to Christmas, the January birthday experience is often a bit low-key, lo-fi, and somewhat impoverished. And that said, there have been plenty of great birthdays, but I feel there was always a sort of a smallness to the event, certainly on the home front, growing up. But that does give me the opportunity to acknowledge my Aunt Michelle, who for years spoiled me rotten on my birthday by organising a trip to Funderland. Funderland, a huge amusement fun fair event that happened in Dublin every year, and it still does. I thought I might bring my daughter this year, but I think the moment has passed. And my aunt, who also is my godmother, would gather the cousins and other aunts and uncles, and we'd go as a large family group and just have the best crack, the best day. And that was just consistently a great birthday experience, until it seemed to become self-evident that we were too old, and it didn't happen again. And part of that big day, I'm sure I've spoken about this before, at the end of the day at Funderland, we'd be taken to McDonald's. McDonald's in Dunleary, one of the first McDonald's locations in Ireland, and that was a big deal as well, to go in and get, my choice was a plain hamburger, plain bun burger, French fries, and a strawberry milkshake. And then you're allowed to get seconds, and I'd just be dipping French fries in the milkshake and going, it just doesn't get any better than this. So that was lovely, very, very exciting, and the height of birthday indulgence. So there you go, for my for all I said a moment ago about the smallness and the impoverishment. I had for a certain number of years a huge event happily coincide with my birthday, courtesy of my aunt. And speaking of my aunt, I have to just take a moment to acknowledge the death of my uncle. My uncle Robert passed away on New Year's Eve, and that was Michelle's life partner. And that's going to be how I celebrate my birthday this year. It was Robert's request that I officiate at his funeral, so that's happening on my birthday in a few days' time, which feels I'm very honoured that was his request. I've no idea what he was thinking. maybe he thought, as I referred to Ridley Scott earlier, maybe he thought I'd be a safe pair of hands. That remains to be seen. But those preparations are happening at the moment. And he's been in my thoughts a lot. And we got to see him to say farewell. I didn't actually say farewell, it was just weird. I went to see him in his hospice last week, and I don't know. I don't know if I was in. I don't think I was in denial. He was very lucid, and my wife and I went to visit him. Other family members were there, and we had a bit of a visit to his room and a bit of chat. And I didn't actually say goodbye. My wife did. I don't know what I was. I don't know. I just saying goodbye felt just as wrong as not saying goodbye. and I'm not sure if I was thinking, no, I might see him again, but yeah, he went a few days after that. But I did, back in November, I did visit him when he was still at home, and I had a really nice conversation with him, and got a very clear sense of his peace with where he was at, and his a very strong sense of his gratitude for the life he had, which was lovely, actually. And he was very clear and candid about being ready for his time to end, and how he probably would have felt very grateful if euthanasia was an option here in Ireland, which it isn't yet. But in any case, I think that was a great help to any of us who were close to him, to know that he was very much at peace with coming to the end, and there wasn't that sort of distress or upset around kind of a desperate clinging to staying around. But it doesn't make his passing any less sad. Yeah, I don't know. For me, he was just a constant positive male presence all through my life, and someone who remained, as one of my other cousins said, just a great male role model. A very smart, intelligent, kind, generous, mischievous, funny man. A great man to be with in a group, just for his sotto voce commentary. He was, yeah, I think that's one of the things I was most fond of, was his sense of humour. And he was also a very passionate, kind of left-leaning political activist, and had great sort of solidarity with others who cared about such things. Particularly, he was particularly interested and motivated by Latin American politics, and spent time in Nicaragua, and was very prominent in organising support groups for Nicaragua in Ireland, and also for Venezuela in more recent years. And that kind of political conviction was always there or thereabouts when you're in his company. But also his passion for music, his passion for films. Yeah, and I think particularly when I was a teenager, and I would have spent a lot of time in his house, his house that he has with my aunt. It was just there was just a great space that was made available, and a kind of a very generous sharing of his space. And there was something about his own kind of what I felt was kind of his own kind of curation of his interests, and as I referred to them there, movies and music. And you could sit down, and he had a very good stereo system and nice headphones, and you could just go through his CDs. And it was just I don't know, there was something there that I always found very appealing about that, as well as just enjoying his company, his warmth. And yeah, he'll be a big loss. Although, in my own personal relationship to how I think about death and people dying, no longer being here, I don't know. I think I don't personally, as I've made very clear before, I'm not a person of faith. I don't believe in a higher power. I don't believe in an afterlife. And at this point in my life, I still feel very comfortable with that. That's not cynicism. That's not coloured by anything jaundiced or misanthropic. I don't feel bitter or fearful. I think we live our life now, and when someone goes, they remain alive in our memories. They remain alive in the emotional and psychic imprint of ourselves, of our being, of our souls. It's a strange thing maybe to mention souls when I've just said so categorically I don't believe in an afterlife, or I'm not a person of faith. But I do believe in a sort of an animating essence that really defines everybody in its own unique way. And I think that is what remains, and that's what lives in other people. When you've been in contact with someone and have known them well enough to have a palpable sense of that essence, I find that a comfort. I find that very accessible when the physical being is gone. Even though we live with the absence, we live with the empty space of those who have departed. I think it is. I think it's how you cope with that, or how you negotiate that, will be very much determined by the closeness of the relationship you had with that person, the longevity of that relationship, and it will be very, very personal and vary from individual to individual. But I think, I feel my choice is to focus on being grateful, I think, and to feel very open to the memory of that person living on within me, and to stay open to being surprised by how that might affect me at different times. And I mean, I when I got the news the other day, Michelle rang me to let me know, and I was on my own in the kitchen here at #blessed, and it was obviously a very somber and brief phone call. It was literally a couple of hours after he'd passed away, and my daughter must have been somewhere else in the house. I don't know where she was, but I just had a very kind of, natural and instinctive cry, and found myself just leaning against the press, the kind of cupboard in the kitchen, just with my hand pressing against it. And it just struck me. I was kind of sort of having one of those kind of out of body experiences where you're sort of looking at yourself going, here I am in my own kitchen weeping, and supporting myself with my hand against the kitchen presses. I'm just looking at the kitchen press and the carpentry and the handle, and I don't know, just going, okay, thanks kitchen press for holding me up here in this moment of grief and loss and pain. And then I had to get on with a very busy day of cooking in the kitchen, because we had guests arriving in, the aforementioned sister-in-law, and her fella and her son, mere hours after that. So they just left yesterday. So in a way, I'm being a little bit indulgent here, because this is probably the first moment I've had just to have a thinking out loud moment, and I don't know if this is the right platform, but anyway, it is what it is. It's my it's my platform, so I'm just indulging myself. and it's nice. It's actually nice to take a moment and be reflective and think about that brilliant, lovely, beautiful man who was such a lovely, lovely presence in my life, in the life of my wife, my daughter, and lots of our family members, everyone really. So anyway, there you go. So from that to, and this is not unrelated, but again, just to return to this idea then of the new year, the new start, the where do I begin feeling, and I spoke about this last year in the equivalent episode. I'm not really a big resolutions guy. And that is not an abdication of personal responsibility. I feel my own kind of credo is very much built on personal responsibility. So I spend I feel like I'm very diligently applying myself to an ongoing determination or an ongoing resolve to keep myself on track and to keep myself well. That seems to be my part of my kind of life mission, is to kind of go, I'm going to take care of myself and keep myself right so I can be of use to others, and I won't expect other people to take that responsibility for me, and I'll try to keep emptying my resentment bucket if I feel I'm being let down. And I think if anything, I'm hovering around the concept of acceptance as maybe the kind of underpinning goal of this year, to see if I can be more accepting of what. Like, that's the question, isn't it? What do you feel you need to accept? What do you feel you find it difficult to accept? And I just think that that's potentially a very powerful area for personal development, for personal change, for personal resolution and settling, and personal shifting to a different space, if that's something you crave. And for me, that area of acceptance, it has to be sort of adjacent to, or part of the pathway that runs alongside conflict, and areas of conflict, and areas of, certainly, I feel like I was often speaking last year on the tell. I was often speaking about my anger, and that was often in a kind of a familial context. It was often in a context of my relationship with my daughter and how my anger would express itself. And I certainly alluded to, maybe more than alluded to. I know at a certain point in a recent enough episode, I was talking about challenging period in my marriage, and trying to be. I feel very protective of my wife's privacy, and her journey, her experience, her narrative. So I try not to implicate her or expose her. It just feels unfair and not cool. And I try to frame all of this through my own experience, in as much as it feels, and again, fair to do so, because that's not the. There's often very little to be gained by trying to speak for someone else, unless they've asked you to do so, which is a very particular thing. But I can only speak for myself on this, really. as I do every bloody week. And you're going, we know. But yeah, I think for myself, acceptance is something I need to look at, and acceptance as maybe as a pathway to change, as a pathway to adjustment, to modification, not necessarily anything as radical as revolution. And by revolution, I don't mean upheaval necessarily, but like a turn in a different direction. Because of course, a complete turn will just have you back where you started, won't it? But maybe that's something that works. I mean, maybe we are all goldfish in our little bowls, and maybe it would be a blessing to have the alleged goldfish memory experience, where they swim around the bowl and every revolution it's all new again. I mean, that's a very Zen kind of concept, isn't it? Can you turn around and face it all again? I mean, this is what we're doing. This is what the way we relate to time. And when I say we, I'm speaking for all of humanity, because I have insight into everyone's experience of time. I believe many of us, I believe this is relatable. The idea that we're all so unbelievably conditioned to do this kind of grim accountancy task of marking time. And we do it with our anniversaries, we do it with our birthdays, we do it with holidays, with yearly events, and we certainly do it at the end of a year, at the end of one year, and at the beginning of another. And it seems to, for many of us, it seems to be a time for the stock take. It seems to be time for a reckoning, a counting, and a sort of a reset. And that conditioning, it's I don't know. Like I spoke last year about trying to kind of step out of that, the tyranny of time, the tyranny of marking our time the way we do, and I suppose that's a sort of a mindfulness task. Can you step out of the slipstream? Can you step out of the machine of counting your seconds, counting your minutes, counting your hours, your days, your months? Your weeks, the days roll by. I mean, my daughter, she's only 9, but she'll talk about the Sunday feeling. She'll wake up on a Sunday and have a whinge and go, oh, it's Sunday, it's school tomorrow. Today, as it happens, is the last day of her Christmas holidays, and I had to persuade her to get dressed because she was like, what's the point? I just want to stay in my pajamas all day. I said, no, change, put your clothes on. It doesn't matter if you think we're not doing anything today. It changes your energy. It changes your attitude to your day, your attitude to yourself, how you view the day. I mean, my poor daughter, she gets these kind of micro lectures, these micro motivational speeches from me, all the time. I can just see her rolling her eyes. And it's becoming, I mean, you just realize this is her. This is someone who lives in proximity to you, just knowing you better and better and better, and seeing through your tricks. And it's like if I have had one of these, if I have had an angry moment with my daughter, and I feel duty bound. Not even duty bound, because that makes it sound like an obligation. It's not an obligation. I take the first opportunity to apologize and recover the relationship, is probably how I see it, and save my daughter from dwelling on the emotional impact of me, shouting at her or being unduly cross. And so it's kind of this terrible thing where she kind of gets this out she gets the first incident, which is the anger, which is obviously very unpleasant, and then I think what seems equally unpleasant is when moments later I turn around and give her this massively sincere apology, this kind of heartfelt, heart-rending I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have spoken to you that way, it's not you, it's me, and then she's just like, oh Jesus. It's probably getting to the point where she just rather, just get angry and be done with it, and I'm not going to take that any more seriously. I don't know. It's on me. It's not on her. Oh man, good luck. Anyway, as I say, this idea of the impact of the divisions of time. I just read this morning. What was I reading this morning? I was reading some Esquire article online. Somebody was writing a review of... No, not a review. Well, yeah, kind of a review. They were talking about Noah Baumbach's movie version of Don DeLillo's White Noise. So Don DeLillo, an author I've never read, but with whose work I feel semi-familiar in spite of that. Don DeLillo wrote White Noise in 1985, and I've learned in recent days that it's considered by many to be his breakthrough novel. I think it was his 8th book. And written in 1985 as a sort of a satire of consumerist America, set on a Midwestern college campus, focusing on a professor of Hitler studies and his wife and their precocious family, and how the moment that the book focuses on the moment in their lives that coincides with an airborne kind of a toxic airborne event, and a kind of an emergency event that forces them to flee their homes, and I suppose the whole book is just a commentary on consumerism and a loss of meaning, a loss of purpose, and being absorbed by the great kind of consumerist capitalist machine, and the search for meaning, fear of death, fear of insignificance, the striving to keep relationships on track and meaningful. Noah Baumbach, you might know as the director of Marriage Story and The Squid and the Whale, for example. The Meyerowitz stories. It's a very funny movie, actually. He's just directed a movie version of the book. So, of the same name, White Noise. Adam Driver's in it. Probably one of the more interesting actors of the moment. Greta Gerwig is in it. Is she married to Noah Baumbach? I'm so confused. I thought, I have to revisit my trivia there. But Greta Gerwig is an actress I struggle with. Love her as a director so far. You heard me rhapsodizing about Little Women recently. But there's something about her screen persona that I find irritating. I don't know what it is. She just feels like a very self-conscious actress. I don't know. Anyway, White Noise is a very self-conscious film. It just feels very arch, and it's a satire, and it doesn't... I don't know. It was hard to get emotionally invested, and that sort of arch, highbrow humour that you find yourself sort of intellectually tittering at, or smirking at, or wryly smiling at, but it's not really punch you in the gut funny or funny bone funny, and I don't know, there can be a coldness to that, but look, anyway, it's whatever, it's on Netflix, it's still it's still a very well made film, of course, and there are this kind of Spielberg elements to parts of the story, particularly the sort of mass exodus of the community during the big toxic event. And that has flavours of Close Encounters particularly, and something about just kind of the kind of ordinary people caught up in an extraordinary event, which of course Richard Dreyfuss captured so well in his performance in Close Encounters. Was that 1983? Anyway, why was I talking about white noise? I don't know. No, I've got completely lost whatever that thread was. No. I mean, that's it. I remember. Sorry. The author of that article was saying how he hates birthdays. He hates birthdays because what it means is everyone he loves is a year closer to death. Jesus. I mean, it's I guess that's, I don't know. That is one way to think of it. I mean, we're all aging all the time. We're all getting older all the time. We all move a moment closer to the end, constantly. And what do you do with that information? It doesn't bother me in the slightest. And don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm not blithely coasting through some bubbled life where everything is wonderful. Not at all. Far from it, in fact. And certainly, I'm a year off a major birthday, so I'll be turning 50 this time next year. And I'm sure everybody goes through this where you go, okay, so when I was a kid, 50 seemed like a monstrous age. And I remember I have vivid memories of my father's 50th, of my mother's 50th. I remember their 40th as well, as it happens. Now that said, I mean, my dad's 50th and my mum's, I didn't think, oh wow, they're so old. And yet there was something about the kind of the scale of the celebrations that was like, this is an age of some consequence. Now, I don't feel like I have any anxiety around that, or sort of I don't feel like I'm entering into some midlife crisis, and I don't have any compulsion to go out and have an affair or buy a sports car, or all those silly cliches of male middle-aged panic. I think I certainly do get a twang, and this is partly, and I think I've mentioned this before, when I reflect on the my desire to be an actor, and going on that kind of journey and training and giving the career a go, and then getting to this age and kind of going, okay, yeah, so people who've stuck with acting and had great successful careers who are around my age, sometimes that hits me in a place that hurts. And you're like, oh man, wouldn't it have been lovely to have had sufficient talent or opportunity or chutzpah to kind of, to get a career like so many people have done. All the famous faces, and that can be spiky at times. But then, I don't know. I find myself very, very accepting of, okay, I made different choices. I had different opportunities. I walked down different roads, and here I am now. And I kind of focus on, well, what am I doing with what I've got now? And that, to me, ultimately becomes the mantra. That becomes the template, the formula for wellness, for functionality, for potential fulfillment. What am I doing with what I've got now? And a lot of the time, I feel satisfied. A lot of the time, I feel satisfied that I'm using a substantive amount of what I've got and doing something with it, and it is fulfilling on many levels. And it's also a gamble. It's also a roll of the dice. But I'm trying to have faith in that. And the podcast, this podcast is an iteration of that. And the wellness content I struggled to produce really for a lot of last year for Aura. Can you feel my aura? The wellness content I was producing for Aura, and I've continued to produce, like that's an iteration of that. And teaching martial arts is an iteration of that. And trying to be a good father and trying to be a good husband and good partner and friend to my wife, that is part of that. And trying to be a good friend to myself is a part of that. Now, I don't think they're outrageous things, and they might sound extraordinarily mediocre and unambitious and mundane and everyday. I'm very comfortable with that. I sort of glory. I sort of glory in that. I think, yeah. It's there's something, there's something out there in how we consume human stories that has us all. It has us all sort of attracted to or noticing or programmed to respond to the big achievements. And that, on one level, is entirely appropriate. It's entirely appropriate to go, oh my goodness, that person did that. That's really impressive. And what an exceptional and brilliant individual they are, and fair play to them. And I suppose that's how we respond to a lot of people in the public eye, who, I suppose, on an objective, on a very kind of quick scan of human achievement, we go, well, okay, they've kind of ascended a certain ladder and got themselves to that position. And we're talking about public figures, we're talking about, I guess, politicians, we're talking about leaders, we are definitely talking about celebrities and sports people, we're talking about actors and musicians, artists, dancers, writers, whoever. We might be talking about prominent people in our communities. I was just thinking about this the other day, because there's I'm not going to remember his name, that's a bit of a dereliction of my research duties here. But there's a guy I'm pretty sure he's from the west of Ireland, and he's done a couple of rowing expeditions across the Atlantic, like solo rowing. And he's also climbed some of the world's biggest summits. And I came across him. I think I just came across him on social media, and because he had some of these extraordinary videos from the high seas, so to speak, and just seems like a very kind of rugged but down to earth guy who's done accomplished these extraordinary physical achievements. Do you accomplish an achievement? Do you achieve an accomplishment? Is that a tautology of some kind? Is that just bad English? Anyway, he's done these great things. And he put up a big spiel on social media the other day, and was talking about, a lot of his plans for this year. It's going to be a documentary about some of the things he's done. And then he had some... Oh man, Jesus, what I should do is just try and see if I can get a hold of this guy and maybe interview him. But he had some sort of setting up some sort of entity to I think, advocate sort of singularity of purpose and high achievement and winning mentality. And I was kind of reading it all and going, this is all just really good stuff, and sort of just admiring the guy, and thinking, right, like he's going to get a response to this because of what he's done. And there's always a part of me that goes, what can I do? What great achievement can I do? Can I try and make happen that will become a pathway for some kind of financial success, some sort of economic success or economic opportunity. And it's funny because it's kind of the antithesis of my mantra, which is rooted in kind of mundanity, and anti-exceptionalism. And by saying, and that's my exceptionalism. By saying that, I'm trying to go, do you realize how exceptional I am in celebrating the unexceptional? Because I personally believe that that's where contentment lies. And that's where contentment lies, is in the acceptance of the tiny victories, the acceptance of the tiny overcomings, the acceptance of survival, and the celebration of that form of unheralded resilience, and the triumph over the everyday challenges of life, the triumph over anonymity and invisibility, the triumph over realizing how insignificant we are. But I think that's brilliant. I mean, genuinely, I think that's where happiness lies. That's where fulfillment lies. To be happy where you are, to be content and satisfied and cognizant of your everyday triumphs, to keep your head together, to not give up, to keep faith with the people closest to you, to live close to yourself and true to yourself. I mean, I really think that's admirable. And I so does that mean I laugh at myself because I'm setting myself up there to say, like, that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do with my life at this stage of my life. And it's not that I don't go, God, wouldn't it be great to get back into acting and get a great role and get a platform to kick on to something else? Wouldn't it be great to get my shit together and write something coherent that represents everything I'm passionate about and try to do and could be of use to people and could shift in significant units? Wouldn't it be great to reach a much better place, financially, economically, with genuine stability, and eradicate the fear and stress that is ever present in our lives, in #blessed. Of course that's there as well. But in the absence of those successes or visible achievements, you don't have to negate all the other victories that happen. And it doesn't negate those other successes that no one sees and no one feels or hears or knows about. But I do deeply believe that is a platform for inner strength. That is a platform for inner peace. And that is a platform for resilience. And in a way, it's just patting yourself on the back when you stand up and put one foot in front of the other and progress into another day of living. I think that's an admirable achievement all of its own. And if you can remember that, there's a gratitude that can be enjoyed, a gratitude that can be present in the everyday. And I think that gratitude is uplifting and empowering, and is a delivery service of happiness. And again, I'm talking about like a lo-fi, slow burn, deeply internal happiness that warms your belly, and keeps you solid on your feet in these very shaky times. So look, yeah, I don't know. There was one other thing I was gonna just quickly reflect on before I finish up, and it does fall into, again, how you kind of step into this new year, and it was the idea of what we're used to, what we're used to, and what we've become used to, what we've gotten used to, and that can be looked at in two very different ways. Because if to be used to something can also be a sort of an equivalency of complacency, and complacency can become a sort of a form of disregard, and complacency, of course, can be just taking something for granted, an assumption of the presence of something that, because of that attitude, becomes devalued. And that, I think that's a danger, and I think that is something that can erode gratitude, and it can erode that sense of wellness or fulfillment or resourcefulness you might otherwise have. And I just think it's something to watch out for. So I think one of the things I'm going to be trying to do in the coming weeks, as I frame this coming year, is to really have a look at what I take for granted, and try to just turn around the Goldfish bowl so I can review it and go, hold on a second, am I still appreciating this? Am I still appreciating what I have? Am I still grateful for what I have? Because it is a sort of a dereliction of, I suppose of mindfulness. It's almost a dereliction of decency and fairness to relegate things that really shouldn't be relegated. That you should have a very mindful sense of, Jesus, I'm lucky to have what I have, and not to be kind of peering over the fence or looking longingly elsewhere to think that's where my happiness will be located. Certainly make sure you're not neglecting the available happiness that's right there with you at all times. That is one aspect of getting used to. So that's kind of like the little alarm bell. Watch out for that. If you're getting used to something in that way, that stops you appreciating what you've got. But then there's also getting used to something. And I was thinking this in terms of the passing of my uncle. To get used to the absence of someone in a positive sense, and to become habitualized to something that was challenging or difficult, and then to acknowledge that it hasn't taken me under, it hasn't floored me, it hasn't destabilized my life or sent me down a rocky path where I feel less capable of coping. So the idea of getting used to things that are painful, the idea of getting used to things that hurt or are difficult or are challenging or take us out of our comfort zone, that I think it's also a very positive way to frame the idea of getting used to something. Now, to literalize that, I could talk about, sea swimming. I didn't manage to get back in the water last week. I still felt a little bit too unwell. I did go down to the sea on New Year's Day, and it was just too bloody rough. Big waves, very churned up, chopped up sea. And I just thought, nah, do you know what? No thanks. It's not worth it. So I haven't been back in the water now. So it's getting on for 2.5 weeks, which is a bloody long gap at this time of year. I know it's going to be a very challenging first swim back in the water. I'm expecting that to happen in the next day or two. But to get used to that, that's been something I've become, have made habitual. The getting into cold water and getting into rough water, and to get used to that discomfort and the difficulty of that and the psychological challenge of that, and sometimes the emotional challenge of that, to get to kind of conquer the temporary fear and anxiety that can sometimes come with that territory, but then to be on the other side of it and go, cool, I feel brilliant now, and again the sense of a small invisible victory. So I don't know. I don't know if that resonates or if it's applicable in any other areas, but I'll certainly be mindful of that. In the coming time. Okay, so look, I don't know if that's a bright note or a positive note to finish on, but it is the note I'm finishing on. Thank you very much for listening. If you've stayed with this, and once again, a very, very happy New Year to you. I hope you can find the space to acknowledge your own little victories, the invisible overcomings. I think that's a worthy aspiration. I think that's a worthy exercise that can just give you a sense of quiet accomplishment, and it's all yours. Doesn't have to be anybody else's, because only you know what you're dealing with, only you know what you're overcoming, and only you know what you've got to face into what's coming next. So here's to all of us. Here's to a great year ahead, a year of fulfillment, a year of challenges overcome, a year of greater levels of acceptance, maybe. That's something I'm hoping for myself. And yeah, here's to another year of this bloomin' podcast. As I said last week, the arrival and revealing of the new website is imminent. A few more tweaks to be had, but that'll be coming over the next couple of weeks. And thanks again to my friend Daniel for doing all the hard work in that department. So I was looking it up online. Is it Feliz Año Nuevo? Is that Happy New Year in Spanish? Feliz Año Nuevo, Daniel. Okay, that's it. You can throw me some love on social media. Look at the links wherever you're listening to this podcast. Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. I'm there. Although I haven't been on Instagram over Christmas. I've been too wiped out, and that's about to change. I'll put some more stuff up now shortly. And if you want to support the show, there is a supporter link where you can throw in a one-off contribution to the clear out, the tell that this attempt to advocate wellness and coping and realistic resilience and positivity. And you can use the Patreon link also. That's patreon.com/the clear out. Welcome anything at all. Nice comments, a share, subscribe, a like, a thumbs up, a load of money, whatever, any of the above. Okay, thank you so much for listening. Happy New Year, and I will talk to you again next week. All the best. See you. Take care. Bye.